For all. All right, I started too early again. Commissioners meeting agenda Wednesday, August 14th. All commissioners are present, and first and foremost, start off with public comment. Don't see anybody up here. Any public comment or just viewing? Okay. Elected officials and department heads are next on the agenda. I'm going to start with the chief. Chief, do you have anything this morning? Hey, Chad, can you guys hear?
Yeah,
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move on from Chad. He had his moment in time. So I'm gonna move on to Doug. Doug, do you have anything this morning?
I don't, but I just want to check on the timing of things because I'm available till 11. Are we going to be able to get to any items on the agenda you have for me in that timeline?
you're first.
You're first on the agenda, so once we get past this, you're up.
That's to talk about the camera project.
Yeah.
And- Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and get Mr. Bogar over here because probably I'll have questions that he can answer much better than me. So I have nothing other than that.
Okay, great. All right, and Kim, do you have anything this morning? Okay. You're here for a reason, and you also have another issue, but I want that to be in non-public because it's about a person. And Cheryl, do you have anything? Okay. Then I'm gonna go back to the chief for a second. Are you with us now?
I am sorry. I was going through my emails and my sound was turned down.
Okay. Do you have anything this morning for us?
No, just part of the department head.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to forward with the first master agenda item number 1193, Department of Corrections camera system changes. Doug Yazway is here to speak to that and to discuss options for keeping Department of Corrections cameras up to date and to address options for replacements. Doug, you are on. Do you want to wait for, is Les here?
He is not here yet. If you want, I can start. He's on his way.
Okay.
Okay. So for a couple of years, Les has been sharing concerns with me about the camera system. The main one being that as cameras fail, and there have been a certain number of failures, he's having an increasingly difficult time getting replacement cameras. They're not out on the market, and he's had to go on eBay and that sort of thing. There is a point in time, which he'll speak to more, where we're very concerned we won't be able to get those replacement cameras. He talked with Rob Hummel a little bit few months ago about beginning to look at options for replacement in the system. Followed up and got an initial bid from a company called Cornerstone, who is specialized in the market of doing correctional cameras. And that initial quote is $650,000.
Wow.
So it's not a small project, obviously. And because of that, Chris wanted to brief you sooner than later.
Thank you.
It's something that I'll let Les speak to it. If we didn't do it this coming fiscal year, we probably will manage to limp along and get through it. But the clock's ticking. Clock is kind of ticking. Yeah.
Is there any kind of like generic camera system? I mean, or is everything proprietized today? Certain cameras have to be specifically, isn't there something generic? I mean, a camera is a camera, I would think, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that you can just replace any camera. The camera, there's camera, there's software that, runs the whole system together. There's all the cabling. I don't think it's a matter of replacing any one camera with any other make of camera. Les yeah, come on in. Les
Hey,
is, Les is here now.
Doug, can you just tell me real quickly, what is the current company that is serving? Is that Cornerstone? Is that a company that bought out the cameras that we put in? I mean, do you know who we currently have? And if we are going this route, is that forcing us then to change all software, boards, cables and everything to meet this company? Or is it that this is a company that we have currently in place and could be a sole source? It may end up being a sole source, because if otherwise we would have to replace everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand your question. Do you know the original company that did the cameras?
I believe the original company that did the cameras here was Johnson Control.
All
Well,
right, so this is, go ahead, Jeff.
let me back up a little bit. How many cameras are we talking?
128 total.
Okay. And as we've gotten to this project like we did before, did we do either an RFQ to identify qualified vendors or an RFP to put this out with the specifications?
The company Cornerstone that provided us with the quote was recommended by Johnson Control and also Rob Hummel. Rob's familiar with the company. They specialize in correctional facilities. So they're aware of our needs, and they're aware of what it is to work in this environment to carry out the task at hand. They're familiar. They had actually, Cornerstone had plans and prints on file from when Johnson Control had done the original installation. So they worked off of those. They're out of Wisconsin, I think. And they travel all over the United States doing correctional facilities.
So we haven't done any sort of gone through any sort of public bidding process for this $650,000 expenditure.
No, because for the simple fact that just trying to get a vendor to give us a quote took me 8 months. Yeah, if we put it out to bid, you wouldn't hear anything from anybody. It's just everybody's Johnson Controls, which is located out of Winster, didn't even want to send a person up here to look at it. They took a pass on it.
You are looking at it, trying to get another bid, but it's like chasing them down.
I have a contractor
go ahead.
coming on Friday out of Marlborough, Mass, who they do airport surveillance and airport security cameras. He's coming with, he's actually sets up the systems, and the individual he's coming with does the actual installation. So they're two separate companies. They're coming on Friday to do a walkthrough just to give me an idea if it's even anything they're interested in. And that took me to set up that meeting better part of 2 months.
So I not to drag this out forever, because some of this I think we can talk about offline, but it would help me to understand what the big difference is between every airport, every police station, every store that has pan, zoom, tilt cameras. They record the images, they can do stuff. What is it that makes jails any different than any other interest in tracking people's behaviors and activities?
The only thing I could come up with to answer that question would be, I think Cornerstone specializes in corrections because they have people that will pass the background checks, who are familiar with the protocol that goes in, because I spent hours on the phone with the representative from Cornerstone, where it's, you know, different correctional facilities have different requirements. Some of the prisons they work in, it's a 3-hour process just to get them in the building while they're in there working. And, you know, the movement of working in a jail versus working anywhere else is 2 different things. And yet all the cameras are different. For example, they have to be inmate proof. You can't just have a regular old camera in there. You can't handle the abuse. We have a camera in the rec yard. I had to fabricate a cage to go over it because inmates destroyed the camera on a regular basis. So that camera is now encased in a cage. There's just, you know, it doesn't, Cornerstone doesn't necessarily mean they're our go-to vendor. All it is that this is what they do. They're familiar with the environment, and they were the ones that were recommended by Johnson Control, took a pass. And Rob is familiar with the organization and he supports that decision. So.
And Jack, Rob had some comments on our thoughts on this. Rob?
Okay, the original security subcontractor on the construction of the jail was Comtech. Cornerstone bought out Comtech, so essentially that's the link why this company.
Okay.
The camera system is not a camera system. To go to Jack's question, why is this different? The camera system is a part of the security system for the jail. So when the operators are running those touch screens and they hit a thing, that camera view that was associated with that door comes up. So there's software and an interface involved that everything's controlled. If you go in and you just replace all the cameras, someone's got to change that software and replace the mechanical switching that's there now, as Comtech was explaining. With it, it'll be basically be a software-based PC running that will then do all of the video changing. All of the BNC type video monitors in the day rooms have to be changed out for now PCs running software. So it's just a component of a larger system. If somebody comes in and just changes the cameras, none of that will work. So the software changes and the programming that has to happen is going to involve Comtech / Cornerstone anyway, because they're going to have to modify the system to work with what was done. So it seems to me that it makes more sense to have that vendor that's doing it end to end and have one person responsible rather than say finger pointing. Well, they put the system in, it doesn't interface, doesn't have the right this or that. There's a lot of coordination where errors could occur. So that's why I believe Cornerstone is the best vendor for this, because they have to be involved anyway.
That's the answer I'm looking for. And so have they actually presented something to us that we can kind of use to create a record that describes that they're qualified to do this, much the same way as we went through when we bid out for Comtech when we built the jail? I mean, I think we need to make sure we have enough information that identifies what we're doing, why we're doing it, and why this ultimately will likely end up as a sole source. So I'm just sensitive, given the amount of money involved, about the process that we go through to select them. That's all.
So this is beyond just a maintenance contract. I mean, you know, this is a job that is beyond just going in and fixing a few problems. It has to be totally replaced.
Well, let me have Les speak to the rate of failure of the cameras and what I started around. We have a ticking clock and not a crystal ball on this, but I think it's worth letting him explain that.
The way my experience up to this point was, Johnson Control is the company, when I cannot fix the camera itself, I call Johnson Control and they send a tech up to work on it. They do work at the courthouse as well. So while they're here, I pick their brains. I actually had an individual here who had worked on the building when the camera system was installed. a lot of the stuff we have in here is now antiquated. The PTZs are fiber optic, and to find someone that can work with that, like first or second generation fiber optic cable is almost impossible. I mean, that's been replaced 3 or 4 times over with a completely different setup. Camera One has been out of service for coming up on 9 years now. And we're at the point where we had to abandon it because the issue with the camera, the parts are just unobtainium. It's unobtainium. They're not available. They haven't been available for years. They then thought maybe we replace the entire system for that camera. Unfortunately, as it was explained earlier, that system is not compatible with the system that we have in place. So we could put a whole new camera and a whole new system in, but it's not capable of communicating with what we have in place right now. Our technology in here is 2000. It's 25 years old, and it's failing. I work on 5 to 6 cameras every week. They overheat, they need resetting, they inevitably break down. I can't find replacements. I have to retrofit more modern cameras to work in the old housings just to get a camera in that location, because I can't buy that camera anymore. It hasn't been available in years. So
would it be fair to say that this system isn't 10 years old, it's closer to 30 years old because of the 24/7 usage?
Most systems are 24/7 usage, so they're geared up for that. But everything that I know about the system, I've learned while I'm here. I'm not a camera person. I'm not an IT guy. It was on the job training over the last 7 years. But I've worked with a number of techs who we brought in, and I picked their brain for information. And from what they've explained to me, the lifespan on this stuff when it was built was about 10 years. So because the technology changes so rapidly, they don't build this stuff to last 25 years because the technology changes too quickly. Much the same way as your cell phone. No cell phone's built to last 10 years. In that time frame, the technology will change so much that phone is completely and totally antiquated. So
is the camera that you said is down, is that similar to all the other cameras? Or do you currently, do you have a backlog of maybe 3 or 4 cameras that if one goes down, you can replace it with some of this that you found on eBay? And is there a way for you to, if we have to, instead thoughtfully look at this, and we have, I can put some money away this year and look at, putting some money away next year, and the third year, can I do something? Is there, can you go online and see if you can find the cameras and have 10 available for failures as they come up? Or is there anything that we can do so that we don't have to take the big bite, that we can develop it over a period of time?
Well, this is what we've been doing. That's been the protocol of what with Camera One, we hit a wall. I had money allocated a year and a half ago to try to repair it. I had Johnson Control in here 3 separate occasions. We spent about $2,000 with them trying to make Camera One work, and then we finally abandoned it because we just simply could not locate the control unit that communicates from that camera to the DVR. It's just could not find it, tried to retrofit one. It just would not work. So
I understand that. I'm just trying to figure out if it's a big pill to swallow.
What happens?
It's a big pill to swallow.
What is the risk? Well, I don't know. I need a crystal ball for that. I mean, we could essentially go for years, but inevitably we're at a point now where they're failing nonstop. So we're beyond, the threshold was at 10 years, so it would have been 2010, which is when we should have been thinking about replacing the cameras.
Well, at the end of the
I
day,
know Rob has done some updates and changed out the DVRs and done some work in there. But at this point, we've already pushing 5 years past
Yeah.
replacement.
I mean, at this point, we got 127 cameras and they're all based on technology that's 20 years old. I don't think it's necessarily, I think we just need to figure out kind of from Cheryl how we budget this and pay for it. Obviously, Doug, I don't know what you think your timeline is, but it isn't going to happen this fiscal year. I mean, it can't. That's $650,000. We don't have any sort of appropriation for that. So the question is, one way or another, we got to replace 127 IT software-based video recording units. And yeah, I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole that they're cameras so much as they are an IT infrastructure integrated with every element of security at the jail. Because otherwise we're just going to sell this with the same concerns that Terry had, that it's just a freaking camera, but it's not a camera. The camera is just the eyeball, and the system that it's connected to is the brain, which is why they cost $5,100 a piece to do 127 cameras. So I think we ought to just present it for what it is, because in the most optimistic day, we're not going to be able to do anything until we pass next year's budget in March. So, and I bet that it's going to be a fairly significant transition and take kind of all hands on deck. And I wouldn't even be surprised if we have to increase staffing for a bit through the technical switchover, because there's going to be some point where the system's not going to work as it does now. So we're going to need more eyes on the ground, if I had to guess, but I'm making that up a little bit. You know, like all major software conversions, a lot of stuff can go wrong. So I guess the question is, what would that look like in the budget? Is this something we would bond for $650,000, or what? Because I don't think it makes sense to kind of band-aid it and kick it down the road very far, because it's just going to get more expensive.
But
Hit the nail right on the head.
yeah, but with that being
Only
said,
be more expensive.
but with that being said, can we get a contract that is signed that, or that they, you know, and can we? There's multiple things. Is there any grant funding out there that we could offset any of this cost with? I don't know. Could it be 2026 and not 2025? And so that we this year set aside $200,000 to $300,000, so that the next year the budget hit isn't as significant, and we go from there. I mean, I'm just trying to, I mean, I don't know what the timeline is. It sounds urgent, but at the same time, I'm just trying to figure out how to fit this all into the budget within the fiscal realities that we face. And it's a big pill to swallow. And so I understand the importance. I'm not slighting that whatsoever. I'm just trying to say, is there the ability for us to think of this in a way that you brought it forward? You think you could have a contract? Could we sign a deal and I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, with everything else that's going into the budget this year, I'm just trying to put it on the table to see if there's opportunities for us to figure this out in a way that makes sense. And if it's this year, it's this year, and we just have to figure it out, and maybe we do have to bond it.
Well,
Well,
I think we should tee it up.
And
Was that
find
Terry?
out, yeah, I think we should go and find out exactly what it is we need, if this 650 is a real number. And
I think
go-
650 is probably, I told them to give me a number that I could present to the commissioners that we could work with. So if we were to perform the work in 2025, we would have adequate funding to do the work. We never had a site visit from Cornerstone. I was promised a site visit in January. It was supposed to happen in May, June, July, And then finally in July, no one ever showed up here. They had a representative in New Jersey who was supposed to come, never came. I deal with this with all the contractors, so I'm not surprised, but they did commit to giving me a number. He presented me with the number 2 or 3 weeks ago, based on the information that he has in the prints. And he said that that is a number that they feel comfortable with, but that would have to happen in 2025. Now, if we wait 2026, 2027, yeah, that number goes out the window. We start all over again. And more than likely, all the data that's in that quote with the specific cameras, the DVRs that they bid, all that information, because all that technology is probably gone and there's all new stuff in its place.
Do we have the capability to actually draft an RFP or an RFQ with enough technical specifications that somebody could respond to it to demonstrate that they understand what we've got and what we need, and can make a more refined proposal? I'm mildly troubled that we've got a $650,000 price, but we can't get them on a goddamn plane to come out here and actually meet us.
Right.
That doesn't.
I know that seems hard to believe, but believe it or not, I currently have 3 hot water storage tanks that are experiencing a problem. Each one of those tanks, in 2010, those tanks were $150,000 each. So we're talking $500,000 between the 3. I can't get anybody to come from Worcester up here to just look at them and give me a price as to what it's going to cost to repair them. And God only knows what they cost now. They probably $250,000, $300,000 apiece. And yeah, we're talking $1 million. They don't even want to they can't be bothered. They're too busy. So, I'm not surprised that it didn't happen as promised. And, but because I deal with this all the time, with the various.
If we did do an RFQ or an RFP, where would we advertise it? How would we get that word out? Rob might have an answer for
That's a
that.
Rob question.
There's some
Well,
publications.
again, you could bring a vendor up, say, I want to replace these cameras, I'm gonna need new recording devices and everything. And that's fine, but it has nothing to do with the security system. The security system is the context software that's running under a license that they call Wonderware. It's an industrial control software. And that's the piece that makes it work. If it was just cameras and recording, Johnson Controls could do it, but this is not in their league at all.
Okay.
And the reason, and I can't speak for Context/Cornerstone, but they don't really need a site visit since they have the original architectural plans of the jail. They made the system.
Okay.
So we're talking about replacing the cameras. Jack, you've seen the nest of conduits that run under that concrete slab. Pull all those wires out. The pan tilt zoom, the outside cameras run on fiber optic because of lightning protection. Pull all that fiber optic out. Pull new fiber. This is a massive job. It's not just changing cameras. And to make it all work, I don't know that I could code that up in an RFP. I honestly don't, because
Okay.
basically it'd be the jail construction bid all over again.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
And does that bump up the price of what you say? If we bring somebody else in, if we're at $650 already, now somebody's gonna have to go even farther than that, then we're heading towards the million factor, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah.
well,
And I don't know that you can get Contact to come in
Yeah,
and modify their software to work with something that a Johnson Control had provided. But then what if they get there and say, oh, we can't interface? You
Yeah.
bought the wrong stuff.
right,
So I don't see how that's gonna work if somebody does the whole job.
yeah. But,
Okay.
but going back to we're going to have some level of documentation from them with not just a price, and not, I mean, right now we have a price that they said, but they're gonna have to come up here and put together some level of document that shows the pricing of why we need to bond or why we need to have something at some point before we can move forward, I would think.
Well, they'd have to put together a plan. And the
Yeah.
plan is, here are the components you need, here's the timeline to get the stuff, here's the timeline for installation, here's the phasing, and this will be our approach to the transition. But I agree, I'm almost thinking that this would be nearly an $800,000 bond. But you also wonder if we ought not combine it with other major infrastructure repairs, like what was just mentioned with those hot water tanks. You know, we can't bounce around you know, a $500,000 repair job here and a $500,000 repair job there and think we're gonna do it in a timely way. To me, subject to Cheryl's opinion, I would think we just do $1 million bond and we roll these things in, and basically what you end up with is, you know, about $1 million capital project for the IT security infrastructure and some of those tanks. And then we begin to establish a timeline for between now and budget time. Of marshaling the vendors and the timeline to try to find somebody to do it. But if we at least lay the groundwork for the financing, Rob and Doug and the guys can work on the timeline to actually get the work done and get it moving. But I don't see any way around $1 million expense for it, even the two items that you've identified.
Yeah, and there may be more that need to be identified too.
And in fact, I have another jail expense in my presentation for about 150 grand to replace the UPS units that run the security system that are now end of life, so.
Right.
It may be good to do that.
You're just making my day today, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, listen, they're going to last another 10, 15, 20 years. You know, we took out a $500,000 bond just to finance the jail location in engineering. And I thought that was a stupid idea then. It probably was. But now we're almost talking 1.5 million. And so these are pretty significant things.
The problem I'm having though is that I need to have not just what people are saying is prices, but more technical documentation that says something. And I'd like to know, like with the Cornerstone, when could they do it? Because if they say, you know, if we get this approved in 2025, and we go out, we bond, and by June we have something, and they say, yeah, but we've got so many jobs, we're not gonna be able to get to it until spring of 2026. Can we lock in a price now for that down the road and save a little bit? And I mean, I don't know. I'm always looking at, if we have to bond, we have to bond.
Well, here's the thing. Once you get the approval for the bond, it's not like you have to go out and get the money and then start paying interest. The authority to borrow that amount is going to remain there until it's revoked or spent. And so what we don't want to be doing is delaying the project for want of financing. We put the financing in place. We develop the specific specifications and technologies, you know, over the next 6 months or longer. And we have this very discussion in front of the executive committee for budget purposes. I think we've created a good record that describes why this is a serious, integrated and complicated infrastructure capital project. And then we just leave it to staff to bring the project together. I think our job is to find the funding. It could be that we could seek some grant funding. I don't know about that. But I don't see any other way around it. I mean, I think our job is to arrange the financing and push it through and lead up to it to ease the chairman of the delegation and the executive committee through this and warm them up to it a little bit. Because obviously, I don't think they have any idea that something like this would be coming. Is that right?
They probably don't, I'm sure. There is a grant that's pretty much unrestricted, and that's got some significant money left over, and that's the opioid abatement grant.
Oh,
It was
oh.
originally 1.4 million. We spent some of that on staffing to bridge the raises that happened, pay grade, upgrade.
Mhm.
I don't remember exactly what's left, but to my understanding, that has no restrictions on how we
Well, that would be that. There you go. That's something. What do we got, Cheryl?
So, so out of the 1.4, I believe we spent about 450,000 of that. However, just so you're aware, it's already been brought into our, it's part of our fund balance. So yes, the money is there, but it's already
Yeah.
part of essentially, what we're working with just to, for everything. So
Okay.
it's not to say that, no, it's not, it is a result of the grant that was, acquired through prior expenses that were,
Okay.
made from the Department of Corrections, but that's something not to be losing sight on. We're
Right.
getting reimbursed for past costs.
Okay,
So
we're looking at two projects here. I mean, what else do we know about the facility? I mean, is there a, a 10-year capital improvement plan or anything like that we've done to anticipate major systems that may need replacement? We just dealt with the parking lot. Is there anything else? I mean, what do we know about that building?
Well, certainly we ought to look at all those things if we're going to go down a bonding road.
water tanks or. Yeah, the water tanks Les mentioned, and he's, as usual, got, a plan and patches and it's not like he brought it up as an example of how long it takes to get anybody out to actually get bids, and it is an important piece of something that needs to get done. We weren't planning to bring it forward this year, even as a capital expense to replace one of them, but he's got patches and things. And again, it's how long, you don't have the crystal ball. How long can you kind of keep repairing it? But they are rusting out, and
Yeah, much like your home hot water heater lasts 10 years and then you have to throw it away and put a new one. They work basically on the same premise. What is the lifespan of it? Well, they've been in place for 15 years. They could last as long as 25 years. They could last 20 years. We had one that began to fail 4 years ago. I implemented a patch on it because I got a quote from Granite State Plumbing and Heating to repair it. It was $25,000.
Mhm.
So we have three. We only need one. So I said, I've got a lot of leeway here. So I implemented a system, made some patches for it, and we clamped those into place, and the thing held for 4 years.
Well,
and I went into work and the patch failed and we had to take that unit out of service. It's now shut off, plugged off, and completely abandoned at this point, but we don't need it. So I didn't see the necessity in repairing it because Elliott Hospital runs on one of those. Why we have three, I have no clue, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
However, as of last week, I'm seeing the same problem develop with the two remaining units at exactly the same time. The patches that I put on there, they seem to be working every day. It gets a little better. They could last years. So, but I think we need to put the one that I took out of service back into service. So if the other two fail, we can have that as a backup.
Well, I think we should look at them. I think we need to be able to, I think we have an obligation to as Terry said, make sure we're not blowing by these serious issues that could create problems. So when we do our next jail inspection, or even before then, next time we're up there,
Yeah.
We
we'll
should-
call
we
Back
should-
and I'll show you.
we should see some pictures and that sort of thing. You know, so Cheryl, it sounds like we could use, let's pretend we did a $1.2 million bond for some number of capital projects at the jail. Sounds like perhaps we could use the opioid funds to fund the bond payments.
I mean, certainly, yes, we could kind of consider that coming out of our fund balance on an annual basis to
Yeah,
fund some of them. I mean, obviously, they run out, but yes, that's a
And I-
very good way to look at it, rather than use it all up front as a lump sum, that it's basically over the years,
Yeah.
gonna be there to offset the cost.
And
and the other thing I was thinking was that the extent to which our jail bond schedule decreases annually, that we add into the budget an amount that keeps that bond payment level, so greater than it needs to be for the actual jail bond, but put enough in there that basically it would delay the retirement of that amount. I'm just trying to find fairly budget neutral ways to absorb a $1.2 million bond for a variety of repairs.
what are we looking at, like, if we did what would we do, like a 10 or 20-year?
I mean, ideally, we probably wanna do 10. I mean,
Yeah.
I would have to say, we wanna match it up with the life of whatever we're doing, and it's sounding like this stuff, it's a 10-year lifespan versus a 20-year.
Right.
Clearly, we would not wanna go more than 20. Maybe we could even look into a 15.
So are we looking like
Yeah.
maybe like $100,000 a year? I mean, I'm just a guesstimate, I'm like,
Well,
just,
you can look in the budget book and see what a $1 million, $500,000 bond costs us. I mean, but I would not do more than 10 years. I don't think you want to finance an asset greater than, say, 70% of its expected lifetime, right? Just as a guide.
And I understand that the funding that we receive, we project with federal inmates, a $1.4 million annually. We're averaging probably between $1.8 to $2 million, because we have a higher level than what we're budgeting for. And I understand that goes back to the fund balance at the end of the day. But could we earmark, as the opiate thing goes down, could we, put in some level of the federal inmates funding that's going in there too at the same time? But I understand the process of all that, but it just.
I think we've got several ways to mitigate the impact of a $1.2 million bond. So, I mean, I
If
think,
I was to just do quickly, I did 1.5 million, but 1.2 million for 10 years, we're looking, and I just plugged in 5% interest. That may actually be a little low, but I don't know, maybe interest rates are starting to come down.
Right.
Between principal and interest, it'd be about 180,000 for the first year. And principal at 120, and then of course, interest declining. So that's just a quick.
Right.
So
and that's
Sam,
pretty good. What is the difference between next year's jail bond payment and this year's jail bond payment if it
Yeah,
reduces a bit?
Yeah.
What's that minor delta?
yeah.
I'm pulling that up as well as we speak.
Because that bond payment goes away in 2027.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so we
Yeah,
should
so
be
it's-
on the side.
it's dropping a lot. So, yeah.
So.
So from a budget impact point of view, that's fairly small if we delay the retirement financial, from a mathematical point of view, delay the retirement of the jail bond and
Right.
absorb some of that into the next 1.5 million. you're still decreasing because the overall amount is lower. You're just stretching it out a little more.
So, between 2024 and 2025, we'll have a decrease in the principal and interest of 77. That's basically the same for 2025 to 2026.
So that's
77,000.
half.
And
So we've already picked up half of the cost of a potential $1.5 million bond. Just
And then, of course, 2027, we will have a reduction of 1 million, just close to $1.8 million.
right.
of a
So
bond.
that virtually makes a $1.5 million bond budget neutral.
Yeah,
Very close, yeah.
yeah. But I'm gonna go back to, you know, if
Inventory.
we're gonna bring this to the delegation, we're gonna have a laid out plan with documentation showing the true cost of what we're trying to do.
Oh, sure. No, we've got a lot of work to do a presentation, but I think we've arrived at a potential solution for some very significant and necessary capital projects at the jail. What I don't want to do is miss anything. You know, we've got several tons worth of rooftop units. We've got the roof membrane. I don't know. We've got a lot of the
In other words, we don't want it a year from now to be going back and saying, and now we need to do this.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I
So
just asked
that was-
Les to start looking at upcoming, the life of the jail. We're in a stage where there may be other items, and to flag for consideration. And nothing's gonna rival a $650,000, you know, ticket item like the camera system, but if we go this route, now's the time to look at a 10-year plan. And
Right.
Terry mentioned, you know, a 10-year plan rather than year to year piecemealing it.
Yeah, we just can't afford to ambush either the delegation or the taxpayers with a big glumping thing. And so if we have the opportunity to secure financing, you know, if it's $1.5 million and we can show that it's virtually budget neutral and we don't need it all, you don't take it. But it's still out there and it's available. And I don't think the bond vote would expire in any time, would it, Cheryl, over say 5 years?
No.
If you only use 1.2 or $1 million out of 1.5, the other $500,000 is still there.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, I don't know about that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know, unless it was written, the vote was written in that manner. I have a feeling that bond counsel wouldn't
Okay.
consider
I understand.
that can,
Right.
years down the road now say, oh, now we need another $500,000.
Okay. So we have to be able to describe with some particularity the purposes for the use of that money.
Yeah.
So
And
that's why we want to do a real thorough capital inventory of major items that we might need at the jail.
I mean, because really
Including
another way-
what Rob had said, the 100 and some odd thousand for, UPS.
Yes. Yeah. The
My thought is
uninterruptible power supplies.
If we
Oh,
really
you had to
were
rub that in,
thinking,
didn't you?
if we were really thinking that we didn't need to do all of it at once and we got authorized to do, I'm just making this up, 1.5 and we only did $1 million, but we knew that there were some things to kick down the can. We were kicked down the road. I think we would be better off setting that money aside in a reserve so that we could then have it ready to be used versus
Okay.
having to go out and borrow it with interest. So I think that may be a better way, even if we had a higher amount to authorize to bond and we realized we didn't necessarily need to do it all at this moment.
And so we would just let it gather a little bit of interest and deal with any arbitrage issues.
Yeah, if we found that we really didn't want to bond or go forward and borrow money for
Right.
everything at once.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because then if we actually have extra money and we've already borrowed it and we're sitting on it.
Yeah.
And we need it somewhere else, then
Yeah.
the delegation can reappropriate the remaining funds to that capital project.
Yeah, and I understand that the commissioners understand this, but it's the delegation that has in the past that we need to continually, not just for the DOC, but across the board, in our capital reserves, continue to feed them on some levels to protect us on some levels too, from some of these situations. And I've always had a goal of, between $250,000 and $500,000 for the nursing home, for the court, for this campus down here, for out at the, and even, and maybe even make more sense to even go higher than that. But it's just for these situations, if we had been able to save some of these monies up, then we would be able to utilize this and not have to pay, at least some of it, to not have to bond as heavy and pay the interest and all the other stuff that we're gonna have to, end up doing. But it sounds like we've come up with a plan that's neutral in the scheme of things. So that's.
I'm not against saving up the money ahead of time, but the criticism is always that you're taxing the taxpayers and you're taking money away from them that you don't even need. And that's not necessarily always a logical way, because it's always better to save up the money ahead of time. But these are big items, and I'm not comfortable kicking that can down the road, because I think the infrastructure is probably too important.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. So,
To answer Les's question, if I recall correctly, the reason there are 3 tanks is because the physical plant of the jail was designed to support 2 additional housing units that were potentially could be added on.
two more pods.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that plant was sized, so it wouldn't have to be rebuilt if those were added.
Yeah.
So do we use all 3, or can we just alternate them?
And Les, what are you doing right now? Are you using one and then alternating the other 2 in?
No, the way the system is plumbed, the reason they're all running is because the way it's plumbed, they all circulate within each other. So you can't isolate one and take it out of service exactly. So what we had to do to isolate the one unit that failed was we disabled it and capped it off. So the shutoffs have been removed. It's literally freestanding right now. It's not tied into the overall system. So it just actually bypasses it and goes to the next unit. Once you've started to utilize the unit, it's not a matter of just drain it down and walk away from it, because it just would corrode. Once you've started using it, you must continue to use it. So that's why we're, like I said, we could be running with just one, but unfortunately, the way it's plumbed and set up, the 2 remaining units have to both run.
And what are the tanks for? Are they part of the geothermal, or?
They store the hot water that we utilize in the building. So the hot water heater heats it, dumps it into that tank, and it stores it at a temperature. So when they call for hot water in the building, that's where the hot water is delivered from there.
And do we have any sort of metrics over the demand and the timing of the demand over the clock? You know what I mean?
I'm not 100% sure I understand your question.
Well, we're pulling more hot water at some parts of the day rather than other parts of the day.
Mhm.
And so there's a demand curve. Sometimes we're using no hot water, sometimes we're using a lot. Do you have a sense of what that pattern is?
Well, I know that during the day, for example, in the morning, when the dishwashers run, of course, it's calling for more hot water. When the inmates start taking showers just before lunchtime, so at 11, then the dishwashers run again at 1:30. So the main usage is at different parts of the day. What we have here in this building is tempered water. So the inmates don't have the ability to call for in a shower. They just push a button and they take a shower.
And what's the temperature?
The water is being tempered before it even reaches the pods.
So there's no real
requires us to have on hand a large amount of hot water to temper with the cold water. We can't basically bring it up to temperature and then send it. It has to be available on demand.
So the tank is a virtual single major mixing valve.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
It has its own integrated heat element. So once the water arrives from the hot water heater at 160 degrees, it has the ability to maintain the temperature 10 degrees plus or minus. A very low output heater, if you will. And it maintains it. It could never take a full tank and bring it up to temperature. All it can do is just maintain what is being put into the tank.
And how many gallons in each tank?
1,000.
Oh, so it's not necessarily a very big tank.
Oh, it's pretty big.
No, but 1,000 gallons. And what's our,
Yeah, 1,000 gallons is, believe it or not, is probably 16 feet tall and at least 8 feet across. It's big.
So
and
because this was designed for a larger facility, you know, we really don't have to replace all three of them. We can just.
No. We only have to do one.
you just have to
Well, I
do some
mean,
replumbing.
We could just take it, well, because there's 3 units, you know, we're probably heating more water. Maintaining, you know,
I
every
think
day
that one
than
out
we
of
need.
service made a big difference. I see it in the amount of propane usage. Because I reduced the demand by 1/3 when I took that one out of service.
We're only using 2 and there's no need to replace and go back to 3. Just to be clear. But
How many gallons of water a day do we go through?
Well, it's measured in units and we monitor the units. We use about 250 to 260 units per month. And how many gallons are in a unit? I don't know. I get it from the water bill that the city provides us.
And
So,
does the volume of that tank, 1,000-gallon tank, turn over once a day, twice a day? Do you have a sense of that?
no way to really tell it. And since we did the new water furnace, we implemented a system that takes the heat from the water furnace, which provides our air conditioning. It sucks that heat into a cell. And then as the water from the hot water tank that's up on the hill enters the building, before it goes to the hot water heater, it passes through that cell and robs heat from the water furnace to preheat the water before it goes to the water heater. Therefore, rather than 72-degree water going to the water heater, it's getting 105-degree water. So it only has to bring it up 55 degrees rather than, you know, I don't know, 90 degrees, right? 80, 90, whatever.
And
So we've got it's a very sophisticated system, and E&E did a relatively good job with putting together a control system to monitor our AC, heat, hot water usage, and control the overall, and to provide us with the most efficient system we could come up with. It needs a lot of interaction because it's flawed in some areas, but as long as the individual knows the flaw, it's worth the amount of time that it takes to do it, because our propane usage has been reduced dramatically since the system's been put into place. So it's worth putting in the time and effort.
has anybody, what's the, yeah, I probably know this, but what is the population at the jail right now? Or what?
Average around
100. It's been pretty steady for a couple of years. So.
Yeah, okay.
And Jack, a unit of water is, according to the city, is 750 gallons.
Thank you. I didn't know. I just know it as units.
Yeah.
So
Speaking of hot water, we learned a couple of years ago that the geothermal system, which really had worked very well for several years, we learned a couple of years ago it was doing much better. How is that right? How's that functioning right now?
the geothermal right now is probably working for the very first time to provide us with something. What something that it's providing us with is coolant to cool the water furnace. We attempted to, in the spring and the fall, during what they called the hump seasons, which were not really cooling, were not really heating. So we could rob heat in the colder days to warm the building. And then vice versa, the cooler glycol that comes from geothermal from over the winter, we use it to try to cool the building. Unfortunately, everybody complains when the system tries to kick into that mode. It's the cool glycol it provides is really not cold enough. It runs in the 60-degree variant, like 65, 66. We need 55. And it really doesn't provide that. And then in the winter months, we need, 112 to 120. It gets us like 105. So everybody complains in the winter months that when we're running off the geo, it's too cold or it's too hot. But it does, I would say, 3 weeks in the spring, 3 weeks in the winter, or in the fall rather, we are providing heating and cooling utilizing the geo. It's not very good. But what it does provide is coolant for the water furnace, that has to be in the 60 to 70-degree range to keep those compressors cool, or we have to utilize the tower. And the tower only runs on days where we're spiking into the 90s. The system cannot provide coolant on days where the units are running like overtime. And then the water tower kicks in and supplements. But if we didn't have the geo, we would be running on the tower all the time. And we don't. So it runs very infrequently. So at least it's doing something.
Yeah.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions?
Well,
So the next step that I'm hearing would be that you're gonna have to start putting together a plan of needs and, so that we have a better understanding of what, if we were to move forward in a bond or borrowing or whatever it may be, that we have a clear understanding with documentation that's clearly outlined what the true costs are gonna be. Is that what everybody else is understanding?
yeah,
Yeah.
we need to begin to scope out all the capital projects that would be expensive
Yeah,
and deal with them all at once,
yeah,
at least from a financing point of view.
yeah.
And on the cameras, we'll get more specific information from Cornerstone. That's on the to-do list, as I heard it.
Okay.
I have a question. Rob, did you get a copy of Cornerstone's quote?
No,
No, I have one in my office, which may give you the specifics you're looking for, because they did designate the specific cameras, the specific DVRs, and the systems upgrades. That's all laid out in my proposal.
So it sounds like what they gave us though was an estimate, not really.
Yeah, because the way they explained it to me was at this stage, until we get a commitment, they're not investing a lot of time in it.
No, I understand that.
Yeah, it's a very, very time consuming process, and they would almost, much like when you built the building and you appropriated $500,000 just to kind of get prints and everything into place. They want a commitment, and I think they would actually start billing us for the work that they're going to do, laying out the whole system.
Mhm.
And,
It's kind of a pre-construction contract.
correct.
when I spoke with Jason Chloe at Cornerstone, went over some of the broad strokes here, I asked him basically for a budgetary estimate to start the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a statement of work.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the conversation this morning. As you can see, we love having the conversation to try to come up with it when there's issues, to try to figure out how to move forward with them. So I appreciate the conversation. And you guys got work to do, and you'll get back to us when you're ready.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna move on with the agenda. Master agenda item number 1194. Rob Hummel is here, Director of IT, to retrieve an informational as possible report on the last 6 months of operations by the Director of IT.
I have a handout for you, Jack.
Okay.
All right, so this, I'm just gonna go through a couple of different items here. The first one page you see here is basically our cybersecurity infrastructure report card, the most recent one. And this indicates the Department of Homeland Security evaluation of our public-facing posture. The important numbers are on the left, 0 risks and vulnerabilities, 0 services open, 0 days with critical activities and everything. It just shows that we're, as far as external probing of our infrastructure, we're passing everything. The only system we have that does have some vulnerabilities in it is the HVAC system that was put in by the outside vendor, where their server at Maplewood that we provided for them still has some vulnerabilities, bad certificates and things. Nothing super risky, but it's cleanup. But we talked to them a couple of times about that and had no response. The next page is just a quick little bar graph showing on a daily basis the amount of probes we have from malicious actors, running typically 500,000 a day or more. It typically accelerates on weekend days when they think nobody's watching. And again, these are all probes that were defeated by our system. But it just gives you the idea of the kind of traffic we see, and that's typical. Next page is just for information. It shows an email coming from the sheriff of Gila County, Arizona, which was malware. There's an image on here rather than text, and it says you have a fax. Click here for the fax, which led to a malicious link that our system blocked. But the salient point here is it's coming from a .gov domain. And Primex was in here recently telling us, oh, get a gov domain, it's more secure. It's not. It has nothing to do with the extension. And one of their arguments was this way people will know it's real if it has a gov domain. And here's one coming from a gov domain that was malicious. So it's really about the security and not the window dressing of the domain.
Well, I know that one of our state reps was eager to have us transition to a .gov thing. I don't know if there's more to their interest than what you just described, and I don't know why that would be more secure than anything else. But so I don't know.
It's not, and in fact, like there are some towns here in Cheshire County that have transitioned to that, where their email is hosted in Canada, so it's not even in the same country. The next 2 pages I have are in fact a quote from Cornerstone. Briefly, the security system that runs the jail exists in 4 different rooms. The main room being behind the central control station, the other rooms being distributed through the jail. In each of those rooms is an industrial size UPS. It's about the size of a small refrigerator. And that powers exclusively the security system, so that if all the power in the jail went out, the security system, the doors, the locks, the cameras would all continue to run. These systems use replaceable battery trays that contain, I believe, 14 lead acid batteries, and they each contain several trays when the system was installed. We are currently down through battery failures. And as it's gone on, as the battery packs have failed, I've purchased new ones and kept the system up. But now we're to the point where we cannot buy those battery packs anymore. We have taken used ones and rebuilt them using our own batteries, and even those are now no longer working sufficiently. So we're at the point now where we can't get replacement batteries, and if as the batteries continue to die, the UPSs will eventually stop providing that emergency security power. So Paul, who works in the IT department, contacted a couple of different vendors. One is Liebert and the other is Eaton, who are UPS manufacturers, and working through Cornerstone with the original specs for the system, came up with two quotes. The Liebert modules would be 142,000 roughly.
Hmm.
The Eaton 95,000. However, there's a quality involved. Liebert, we consider to be more industrial and more dependable. Eaton, we've had issues with some of their units and things, so there's a price difference, but I think it reflects quality. But these are something that should be addressed, and this bond's probably a perfect thing for it.
So this backup, how does this differ from our generator system?
Well, if power goes out, there's a lag before the generator kicks in and supplies power. During that time, all the systems would power down, the computers would be turned off and things like that. What this does is this keeps it running independent of the external power supply. So
There's not
that brief outage. And if the voltage fluctuates and everything, this sits between the commercial power and the security system. So a voltage surge and things like that, nothing it isolates that system from any possible damage.
Yeah, remember, the batteries are not so much backup as they are uninterruptible. And so it maintains a constant, measured and balanced level of electricity to the security system. It's fed by the outside power, it's fed by the emergency generator, but it is the primary source of electrons for all of those systems. And that's what makes it uninterruptible, okay? Right?
Yes. Yeah, and in fact, what happens is commercial power charges the batteries, and then the unit takes that battery power and makes pure AC that does not have any issues with it, voltage surges or voltage variation and so on.
And we have a similar setup, and we ought not miss that conversation. We have a similar UPS structure at dispatch.
Correct. Yes.
And I don't know what the status of those batteries is, but we did replace a bunch of them. I suppose 5 or 6 years ago, they were literally so hot I thought they were going to start on fire.
Well, in fact, I believe that dispatch has replaced one or two of those UPS units already down there to run that. But yeah, it's a similar system and an analogy to that.
Are the UPSs in the room where we put the split in? Didn't we put a split downstairs in the computer room down there to help offset the heat?
I think they're behind the control room.
Are they behind the control room? Okay.
I think.
You know what I'm talking about?
No. Oh, you're talking about the jail?
No, downstairs here.
There's a small room. I don't know if a split was installed next to the boiler room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where we put the split to help keep the room cool. Yeah.
Right. The UPSs used to be one floor up in a closet, I think. But anyway, it would be worth, if we're going to talk about UPSs, we should at least again do a 360 view of UPSs, no matter where they are, to the extent that they might have a financial impact that we ought to mitigate with a bond.
All right, the next item. Just under a month ago, it was brought to my attention through talking with Jill in dispatch and some vendors that she was talking with. There's been an update to the CJIS policy, Criminal Justice Information System policy. And like a lot of policies, they make decisions and then it gets passed down, it filters down to us. The big change that's coming on is the requirement for a multi-factor authentication when it comes to accessing criminal justice information. It used to be that a cruiser was considered a secure environment. In the new version, it's now no longer considered a secure environment. So for the sheriff's deputies to log into a laptop and access our computer system that contains access to spots, we now have to have two-factor authentication at that point. which means that the way we have been doing it, which is, I hate to get into the weeds here. They log onto the laptop, they go over a virtual private network to our internal network, and then from there, they connect to their desktop sitting on their desk, and they run it from there. So that the bandwidth of trying to send all that information over the VPN and over their cellular connections is smaller than if they were trying to run directly. Well, we can't do that anymore. We have to change the way that operates. So we're looking at changing their login procedure, getting them new mobile clients for their software so they don't have to run this RDP connection, and getting dual factor authentication, which means some sort of fobs, things like that. It also changes the requirements for encryption and firewalls, which means that we now have to buy new firewalls for the jail, which has the APIS machine, which is on the same network, and for the sheriff's department. So we're looking at new firewalls, two-factor authentication, and all of this has to be in place presumably by October, which it's not going to be. It's gonna take us some time to develop and roll this out. But roughly speaking, we're talking, the firewall that I believe would be adequate for this, for the sheriff's department would be $2,500. Roughly $900 for the jail, which doesn't need as much. And then a lot of work on IT's department. Now, going back 10 or so years, when I first started here and redid the networks, we arranged it so that each of the campuses here was isolated from each other and then connected by VPN spokes. Because of this, it's going to be very easy to isolate the sheriff's department, which I think is the way we're going to have to go. We're going to have to cut it loose and make it a separate domain. And then the interface from there out will be allowed, so they can see other things in the county, but nobody will be able to see it. And that'll meet some of the these new requirements for security of the information. That transition is going to be relatively easy, but it will depend on this new equipment. So we've got some major overhauling that has to happen with the sheriff's IT to meet these new requirements. The other thing that has happened was many years ago, the local towns wanted to access spots or to run plates and things like that. To do that, we set up a way where they could remote in to our system, go to a virtual desktop, and then access the IMC spot software. I don't think we're going to be able to support those outside towns anymore under this new requirement, because we don't have enough control over their equipment to say, here's your fob, here's the laptop, here's the software that authenticates you. We don't have the resources to do all of their personally owned equipment. So I've already discussed this with Eli, is we may need to stop providing that.
Is that used on a high level?
Sure.
Is that
Do it all the
used
time.
Is it used all the time by the towns?
I think there are currently 3 towns using their connections. And as I understand it, they mostly use it to run license plates as they're sitting watching traffic.
Can I ask a question? Could the cost be shifted to them to say, if you want to continue this would be something that you now need to invest in so that you can? I mean, is it just a monetary thing that we can't afford to, or, so that's what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
if they really want to continue this, can they be the ones to have to invest in?
That's a good question, and I have looked at that, and it's really a prospect of management. So for example, to meet these requirements and be confident in it, I would have to provide the laptop. Okay, I would have to configure it, basically act as a reseller to them and say, you know, this is what it's gonna cost you to have a terminal. And then we've got to get assurances from them that they're gonna follow the security. For our employees, I can pretty much say that this is the way it's gonna be and the policy comes down. But to tell somebody in Hinsdale, you know, this is our cruiser, one laptop, and when the next guy comes on here, just use this account, use this password, we can't be doing any of that. So now there's gotta be some sort of policing involved, pardon the use of the phrase, but there's no I don't have any oversight over the security. And we would basically be putting our security posture with the state at risk for somebody that we don't have direct management control.
Couldn't they just use the state police system? State police have to use the same protocol.
There's no mechanism in place right now for somebody in Marlboro to access the state police directly.
They have to use that.
They're using us because to put that in place, they would basically have to build the same infrastructure we have. They'd have to have a VPN, a secure connection, and they'd have to implement all these multifunction. And the cost of it is probably beyond the
The state
average.
police don't have. They must be able to.
Well, you mean the state police like in a state cruiser?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a system that's put in by the state's IT.
And the towns can't use it.
They don't have the equipment. They'd have to have a laptop, the software, it's licensed.
So this is sort of a service that we have been providing.
It was a service that we provided, yes.
I'll go back to Sheriff's question. This is gonna have to probably turn out to be a fee-based service.
Well, not only fee-based, but there would be hardware involved, and then basically the county now becomes their IT support.
Sounds like
So-
that virtually makes our IT take on another department, really.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? You now have basically another department.
Right, and so every time there's a login problem or an update on the PC, basically, we'd be doing what we're doing now with the sheriff's department.
And what I'm hearing you say too is that if an officer is on patrol, he has a login, he goes in, he does this. The next guy that comes on that takes the cruiser. In the past, it would be the same login, they go in, they do the thing. It's now they would have to have their own separate accounts. They would have to, there would have to be some discipline that's not there currently.
Well, no, what I'm saying is it was always supposed to be their own logins, but we've had cases where an officer leaves the department doesn't tell us, and they just say, here, use these credits to the next officer. So now we've got somebody logging in, we don't know who it is, and they're just like, oh yeah, we just use the same one for everybody. We just don't have any control over the security, and it typically, the further down the chain you go, the typically more lax the attitude is towards security. Because they're not trying to do security, they're trying to do their other job.
And what Jack is saying is that if you were to put those controls in place, you're pretty much running that
Right.
department's IT.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have the capacity to increase the level of free service that we're giving to others. I'm not sure.
But isn't it already happening right now? Aren't we already providing these services to them? I'll see them come into your office and turn something over to you and guess. So it's already happening. It's just that now there's another cost that is gonna
Well,
be
It's
greater.
another regulation.
Another regulation
No.
that,
It's happening with a lower level of security. The
right,
higher level of security requires a more hands-on approach and new hardware. And like I said, basically now they say, here's a laptop we bought at Staples.
Mhm.
Make it work on our system.
Yeah.
And we put some certificates and things on there that allow them to access securely. All of that now is invalid under this new requirement. Can't use the VPN we're using. We'd have to use a different client. We can't use the software we're using. We'd have to have them buy the mobile client. And then we'd have to have control over the hardware, which means basically we have to buy it and provide it.
so basically what's happening is because of these higher level of securities, we are gonna have to let them know that we don't have, I guess, the capacity any longer to support them.
Yes.
And so, so I guess that's what it is we've been supporting them. It's just that now we're gonna have to let them know, we can't.
So if we're gonna get pulled over Winchester.
Right, so
Going way back. I have some perspective on this. The original motivation for this was all the PDs were calling in over the radio constantly, asking to run plates. So this was put in place to cut down on the radio. Okay, and now speaking with Eli and Jill, she's telling me that the communication level from the towns has dropped. Sometimes they'll do a stop and not even let them know. So there's kind of been a dilution of what's going on.
So we just go back. to
Oh, it's the-
radio.
It's the Monadnock High School theory. They built Monadnock High School because Keene High School had too many students. Now that the enrollment has
Right.
gone down, they should combine, yeah, it's the same things. The numbers have gone down, so now we can look at it differently.
Yeah, and I've already spoken with Eli, and I guess he's gonna address this at his chief of police meeting and sort of put this out there that this is gonna go away. But there used to be maybe 10 or 11 towns that did this, now we're down to 3. I think it's just, for some reason, whatever, it's becoming less popular.
Well,
So it's probably-
good news is it's only 3 towns. I'm not
It's
quite
not-
sure. I'm not quite sure why there's been an erosion of participating towns, but I guess that makes it easier for us.
Yeah,
It is a lot of maintenance on our part, even as it stands.
Yeah.
okay. All right. That's an Eli thing, right?
So,
Yeah.
just the new firewalls and things, I'll be putting in this budget request. So that we can get them in and try to get at least this infrastructure plan while we're working on some IT stuff.
Okay.
All right, that's all I have. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
All right,
So
any
you're
other
asking-
questions?
So you're asking for like 240,000.
You went downstairs to get the point.
No, it would be one of those.
So,
So,
oh,
yeah, the 150,000 UPS upgrade for the jail replacement for the end of life system.
yeah,
Is really, I'm acting in an advisory capacity to the jail. This is not an IT lane thing, it's a jail infrastructure, but I have the knowledge, so we spec it out.
And the only other question I would have is as we move forward at the 360 look at the UPSs. Is that something that you would look at? Is that something that, I mean, so we're talking, are we talking nursing home?
Well, the
This
nursing home,
building-
that's something I know the sheriff did. I worked with Arlene the last time, just to scope it out.
Yeah, I'm just asking, should I am I gonna follow up or are you gonna follow up? Because I just want to make sure it gets done.
You're gonna follow up with Dave Duval at the Sheriff's Department.
Okay,
The Maplewood doesn't have a system like this,
okay,
and neither does, this building.
okay. All right, thank you.
It's mostly the dispatch integrity, I think, so.
Chris,
And yes, sir.
sorry, finish before Rob goes, I wanna jump in, but I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I was gonna move on, so you, but I might as well jump.
All right, I don't, unless I missed it and I had to step out, while Rob's here, we should probably talk about the SQL server and, unanticipated cost that was part of the, capital expense for the, JMS system. I think you wanted to bring that here.
I've heard something similar.
I can't hear you.
Okay,
Okay,
well, we're back now.
Repeat everything you just said.
He's-
We lost you for a second.
Repeat everything. I
What
don't
other
know if I
means?
missed this. I had to step out.
Just start right from the beginning of what you said, because as you start talking, we lost communication.
Okay, I might have missed it if Rob mentioned it, because I had to step out for a couple minutes, but I don't think he did. And we had talked about bringing up here the SQL server and an unexpected cost tied in with that capital project for our jail management system. And I think it's $9,000 approximately. But I wanted to discuss that while Rob was still there. Did you get that?
Doug, I just want you to know, there's a movie I was watching the other day, wasn't really watching, I just came across it, Sandlot, the baseball, the little kids playing, and there's a quote in there, "You're killing me, Smalls." You're killing me, Doug. All right, go ahead.
Wait, let me-
Yeah,
Okay,
So-
well,
Go ahead. Sorry, Rob.
all right, so basically, the Beacon, the software vendor for the new jail inmate management system,
yes,
gave a quote for the installation configuration of their software. There was a list of hardware requirements, which we met. And now, what they're saying is there's also there's a piece, the database engine that sits underneath the software, MS SQL. They're saying we have to provide that's not part of their software. So we have to provide this database engine to license the database engine for use at the jail to cover all the users will be approximately 9,000.
So this, that $70,000 jail inmate software program, that the 70 will buy the software, and there's an additional 9,000.
Okay.
So we'll have to figure out where to, well, what is the,
What does it go to?
parking lot coming out to be?
The expectation is that's gonna use up the 250. I mean, there may be a little wiggle room, but I don't have an exact figure, but the conversation was that we're gonna use it.
What does this do? What does this do? What does this allow us to do? At the Beacon, it's in, just give me a little bit more.
It's replacing X Jail, which goes end of life at the end of 2025. So X Jail's our current vendor, or their Securus product, and that's going end of life. So
So could so when you say vendor for what?
jail management system, the database for the jail, the inmate database.
All right, I didn't know if it had anything to do with that we could use Canteen.
No.
Okay, hey, I'm just always looking.
Yeah, that'd be a real stretch.
Can't blame me for trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right, we'll
Well-
figure something out.
Well, it's only $9,000. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm sure we can figure that out.
yeah,
Right.
we can.
Well, here's the thing. Beacon is gonna be boots on the ground September 1st.
Yeah.
I need to buy this software and get it installed before they're here, so that's our window.
I think
We'll work together.
we'll work together, we'll get it
Yeah.
done.
Just get it done. I mean, we can't jeopardize a $70,000 project for $9,000.
Correct. Yeah, you just keep moving forward and we'll touch base, we'll look at things today and
Send
see.
me a charge number and I'll order it today.
All right,
Yeah,
And
get it done.
It's the overall project, even if the
Okay.
project has to go over.
In the
we'll,
meantime.
We'll figure out,
yeah,
unless it's, I mean, is it a separate component though? I mean, I guess from a standpoint, because we're gonna have to, apply this as an overall fixed asset. Is it really kind of a separate component on its own standing?
Well,
Because I don't wanna just.
by itself, it can't do anything, and by itself, Beacon can't do anything, it has to be.
So it's part of the overall.
It's
yeah,
yes, it's part.
yeah, whatever that project number is, then continue to apply towards that.
now, we can either contact you if you wanna come back up in reference to non-public for wage.
Oh, I'll stay.
All right,
I forgot about that.
yeah,
Go on then.
all right,
All right.
so we're gonna keep moving on unless Doug, you have something else that you wanna just give me more gray hair or less hair?
I don't dare.
All right, I'm gonna move on then,
The cocktail Bob's house.
I know, yeah, thank God we had Bob tonight, gotta have alcohol. We're gonna be moving on and it's my report, so I'm gonna start the county administrator's report, so starting off with and Kim, if you could turn your mute off, so because I'm gonna ask you a question in 2 seconds. I don't know, do you hear? So we have a young man who's been employed with us for 4 years up at the nursing home, who has an opportunity to join facilities. He's currently in environmental, and he can join facilities. In the area that they really are looking at and do, part of it is learning the plowing of the driveways, utilizing the plow truck and other things like that. We have a policy. The young man is 18 years of age, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim. And we have a policy in our handbook currently that states that anybody under the age of 21 cannot drive a vehicle in the county. And we looked at the Department of Labor, looked at Primex, both of them come back and said there is nothing, no issue with them. And it's just a policy that was put in place at some point for some reason. And I would like to, after listening to both Catherine Kindoff, who is our nursing home administrator, and also and Kim May, who is our HR director, and Aaron Newman, who is the director of facilities at the nursing home, all said this is an individual who's shown great levels of responsibility, has been a strong employee with us. He really wants to take this next step, and they feel they can train him like they do anybody of any age. Because there's a lot of individuals that utilize that plow truck that never had any experience with plowing prior to that. And they feel that he could easily step into that and they don't have a concern about that at this point. And so I'd like to waive that, and then at some point when we reduce, when we look at the policy, we bring back, because that we're in the midst of the handbook revision, and at that point, we would look at that and see what we want. But we did check with Primex, we did check with, and look at the Department of Labor laws, and nothing says we can't do that, and they both said that they don't have an issue with it.
So he's got the proper licensure.
Yeah, everything's perfect.
Do we do a license check? Do we check their driving?
Right now, we do not do a driving record for facility staff. I certainly could, for this young man coming on to facility staff as a new person. It cost us $15, but it's, probably money well spent.
I think so.
So if his driving record comes back clean or relatively safe, yeah, I mean, I will, just follow up with what Chris said. I think this young man could be, I don't want to say a lifer with us, but I think he could be a good person. His mom has worked with us for how long, Cheryl? Coming on 20 years?
At least probably about 20 years.
At least 20 years. So, and he's been working for us since he was 14 years old. So I think this is a good thing for us to give him this opportunity to learn a new trade, and move up with the organization.
I have no
What
problem.
jobs are available for a 14-year-old kid? And is this kid a high school graduate?
He has graduated high school, yes, sir.
What does a 14-year-old do?
He's worked in housekeeping on the weekends since he was 14 years old.
Is that legal?
Yes, yes, there are certain chemicals that he can't work with. There are certain chemicals that he can't work with, and he's restricted in his hours as a 14-year-old, but it is, we have had a handful of 14-year-olds work both in dietary and in environmental services.
Okay. And to be honest with you, I'm having lunch in the near future with Rob Millay, who's the superintendent of SAU 29. And I'm going to push very hard that the school district as a whole really start challenging the Department of Ed pertaining to internships and really pushing kids to get out there more and more and more, because, this is a kid that's grown up with us, and if, he's going to continue to grow with us. And if he likes the job, I mean, someday he could be the director of facilities if he, because he's only 18 years old. So he's got some years of growth. So
I think he should run for president, but in the meanwhile, I'm happy to make that motion to waive the policy and to ultimately change the policy so we don't have to keep doing waivers.
Yeah.
I'll even second it.
Yeah. All right. Any questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Wasback.
Aye.
Commissioner England.
Aye.
And Commissioner Clark.
Yep.
Thank you very much. We move on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Will you notify Catherine? In the process? Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm doing it right now.
So it's just subject to the driving record.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. All right, as I did last week, I want to update you on the Southwest Fire Mutual Aid and where we stand. As you remember, the short history is that because we were able to look at the sheriff's dispatch and, utilize and cover the $4.4 million would to improve or not improve, to upgrade the infrastructure in the communities. And not even upgrade, that's not the right word. It's the end of life that we needed to then take and look at the infrastructure in our communities. We were asked to cover Southwest Fire Mutual Aid's same issues of infrastructure in the communities with the radio frequencies and communication and telecommunication. And as I stated last week, we've been looking at different ways to cover this $4.8 million request, and we were notified that Senator Shaheen, after they gave us a congressional spending request of $936,000. In the meantime, we also been notified, I don't know if you saw in the Union Leader last week, but we've been told up to a week ago that American Rescue Plan funding was about $3 to $5 million. I had heard higher than that. I had heard as much as 15 million. And it was reported in Sunday's Union Leader that is between 23 and $25 million. And I've heard it's actually maybe even a little bit higher than that. Who knows? But we did send a request into Homeland Security Director Buxton to see if he could, on our behalf, send it into the governor to see if we could get some level of funding to help offset this cost for mutual aid. We also, in the meantime, when Massachusetts 911 went down because of human error, and then a few hours later, they figured out what the human error was and turned that switch back on. We sent a letter saying when our system goes down, it's not human error, it will be a catastrophic end of life failure. And we also have had, and we have the letter as of today, yesterday, we have the letter from Donovan, Senator Fenton, along with Senator Riccardi and Senator Ward. So we have a Democrat and 2 Republicans signing a letter stating, asking the governor to consider funding this too. That will be going out today to the governor, to one of his aides, Harold Walker, and also to Chase Hagman, who was the deputy chief of ARPA funding, and as I've been in communication with, who's been a good friend to Cheshire County, allowing us to utilize some funding that's been coming out. So that's been a good thing for us. The other thing that we figured out yesterday, it's been in my mind, and so I started digging a little bit, asked Dan about it a little bit, is I don't understand why we can't ask for legislation to help pay for this. And and also include capital in, because they're trying to do the same thing. And if you look at Southwest Fire Mutual Aid, Capital, which is Concord, Capital Mutual Aid, which is Concord area, and then the Lakes region, that's 50% of the population in the state of New Hampshire. Lakes region, the state paid for. So why can't, and so that's something that we're pondering too, but with the turnaround, it's gonna have to be very quick because you have to get your bills in now. But we're looking, and that's another thing that we're gonna be going after is that. And I had Suzanne look at this week, CDBG or Community Development Block Grants. We cannot use that, but they did say that from their perspective, the state said that we should really focus what we're doing on pertaining to FEMA and the brick grant and going after that. So those are things that we're going to continue, and I'm going to keep telling you this story over and over because it's changing a little bit every week, and I want to keep you guys up to date on that. Questions? Seeing none, moving on. We have tomorrow we'll be meeting with the Teamsters in union negotiation, and then on the 29th, we have ASME, which is the nursing home. So that will start their union negotiations for LNAs and facilities and not facilities. I thought it was.
No, absent,
Yeah,
no, maintenance is not part of it.
it's not. All right. Well, okay.
Environmental services.
Environmental services. That's it. All right.
Maintenance non-union.
They're non-union.
Yeah. Terry, as always, I like to offer any update on Cheshire Community Power. All right, on dates for you guys, Cheshire County EMS pinning ceremony is the 14th. All pinning or I don't know, that, you know, where they, you know, we
Swearing
have it swearing in. Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess they're not dating, right? He's not a date pinning. Yeah, never mind.
The
Going back to the
14th,
old school.
the 14th of September,
Yes, at 1 o'clock.
a
At 1
Saturday,
o'clock.
a
Yeah.
Saturday.
Yes. And it's at Monadnock Regional High School in the auditorium. Because
Okay.
we realized we had 50 people.
Oh, yeah.
And if they bring 2 people each, that's 150 people. And some people may bring more than 2 each. And that's not, and so, and then we said, what about the delegation? What about the towns and the select boards? What about the city of Keene and the city council? And what about the chiefs in the community? And all of a sudden, we're like, wow, we could be at 250. So we thought that would be a good thing to do. And Jack, just so you know, there will be a request for you to say a few words at this. So start thinking about that now. You'll be on the agenda.
Well, I would like some talking points from Chad. So that
We can
they're
make that happen.
on, so that they're on point and relevant and really kind of get down to all of the right levels and acknowledge the right things.
Okay. All right. So that's again, the September 14th at 1 PM. And you all received, that UNH, cooperative extension, the MOU ceremony is at Primix on September 6th at 11:30 after the governor and council meeting that's going to be held at Primix.
What date again?
Friday, September 6th.
Friday, September 6th. And just a quick all of you were at the executive committee meeting on Monday. Everything that we brought forward passed and moved forward. Yeah, and everybody with that all voting yes, which is great. So we do have the full delegation coming in on Monday at 7 o'clock. So please, if you have the ability to attend, as we will finalize those budget changes and go from there. So any comments, any thoughts about Monday's meeting? Okay.
With everything having passed unanimously, it should be straightforward, I would think.
In theory.
In theory, yes.
In theory. I've never had it not do this, but you never know. So then I'm just making sure I covered everything.
So are we still meeting this Friday from 1 to 3? To talk about,
Yeah, we have it on our calendar. Yeah.
is that something that Terry should attend? If he can?
I would think so. I talked to him on Monday about that, and so yes, we're gonna be talking EMS, and so on between 1 and 3.
It's really about the long-term funding, and given that in about 3 months, you're going to be the last commissioner standing. I want to be sure that you're kind of up to speed with all the details on all that stuff.
That's when Nat's in the morning.
Oh, well, that's more important. So is it start at 1? Yeah,
I'm an
then what
usher for that.
I can do is I can fill you into the discussion, but you gotta go to Nat's Memorial.
I have to go as well.
Yeah.
I'm an usher.
Oh, okay, that's nice. Okay. All right, did you see, Jack, did you see that Rick Menard sent us a job description? I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
I did not.
Yeah, he sent it to all of us, but I'll send it to you if you haven't seen it.
Well, but why don't you and Davis just make it our own and and make any edits that are useful.
Yeah, yeah, okay,
So I don't, you and Kim can work up a job description, or I don't need to be involved in that.
okay.
What,
And in that, he also said, this is just an idea, if you go down the road of you all doing, but he also said the idea of contracting out makes as much sense too, but this would be a good guideline for expectations around that job. In other words, if his company came in or somebody else, but he wanted to give us the job description first and foremost. So,
well, once we have the job description, are we going to then fashion an ad to actually hire somebody? And then you and I and others will seek to round up the funding to pay for that?
or do we reverse that and try to find out where the funding is before we hire?
Well, either way, but
Yeah.
are you
Yeah, that
suggesting
would be, that would
you-
be that would be the expectation, to see if we could somehow find the funding so that we can make this reality.
are you suggesting that Rick might have an interest in
Yeah,
us
yes.
subcontracting?
Yeah, yeah, he has said that in the past, that he has somebody that could come over,
Okay,
but he didn't want it to assume that, you know, or presume that was the way we wanted to go. So
okay.
he gave us a
All
job
right.
description to work off of.
Yeah, so we should, maybe next month we can, well, even this month, we can identify 2 or 3 people to speak to about funding.
Okay. Okay, just an update on the handyman programming for you. The handyman program is a program that we developed about 6 years ago now, where we take a certain set of money set aside of funding that is non-tax dollar monies per se, it's pro share monies. And we contract with Service Link, who works with elders, to be the referral agent for us. We also have a relationship with the hospital, and the last contract is with Southwest Community Services, who has their weatherization team, who we use them as the contractors. And what this all does is that if somebody's had a health crisis where they can't go back into their home, and they are in a position where they're in the hospital. And on a side note, a year ago, the Cheshire Medical Center lost, due to the inability to move patients, lost 3,500 bed days, because they had people that could not move for a multitude of reasons. So this is a small answer to their issue, where we go in, and if somebody needs a ramp, or if somebody needs bars in their bathroom, or whatever it may be, some level of renovation for their health crisis. We're not doing roofs, we're not doing heating systems per se, but we're just getting them in their house. It's what we see as a continuum of care, so that we're not seeing them in the nursing home. We're not seeing them in assisted living. They can stay in their home. They can go home to their loved ones. And we are now at or around 42 homes in Cheshire County. And I'm about to tell you that we just completed one in Richmond, New Hampshire, where an individual was at the hospital, wasn't able to go home. We were able to get them the ramp so that he could get in his house. And then we are looking at one in Swansea. And so we've done them all over, from Hinsdale to Rindge to Keene, to all the way up to Walpole. So it's
And
been a very.
we're using SCS and their folks to do the work?
We are using yes, we're using the weatherization team. And now because they're so backed up, we're also utilizing others, but utilizing the same vector, the same process that is the same metrics that we use for that Southwest Community Services that uses for their vendors, to approve, insurance and all that other stuff that needs to be done. And so it's worked out quite well, because we had a backlog of situations, and it was just that their people were so backed up. And if you remember also that we set aside $20,000 and gave it to Southwest Community Services because they do all the weatherization, but if somebody has a life safety program, issue in their home, they cannot use weatherization funding to correct the life safety, so they can't do the home. Because if they can't, and so with the monies we've given, Southwest, Community Services, there's a lot of Southwest here. They've been able to utilize that. I think last year they used about 9,000 of that 20,000. So what we do is we just add in the difference that, and we keep it at 20,000, and it just allows them to be able to move forward on those homes that need that. So, the RFP is in on the Red Barn. We only had one proposal for the Red Barn, and that's Griffin. So we're gonna move forward with Griffin, and doing the upgrades to the Red Barn out at the Westmoreland complex. And what that's gonna turn into, as you're well aware, is an agricultural education center. And really, we're just upgrading the sides, the roofs, the doors.
Is this phase one, or?
This is phase one, and that means that the Conservation Committee, UNH Cooperative Extension, Antioch, Cheshire Career Center, Fall Mountain High School, and others can utilize the classroom. It's not gonna be anything pretty, but it will be a bathroom in there. It will be so that they can do a classroom, and then they can go out into the field. And so.
And do we have a vote from the delegation that is supportive of this renovation project?
Oh, last year, yeah. Yeah, we actually, if in the conversation last year, at one point, Representative Eaton actually wanted to add more money, like, bring the total up to $750,000. And we said, we just said that at this point, with the congressional spending request we had at the time, and the 300,000, we felt we had enough funding to do the project. So he was able to rescind that motion, and then they passed it, and they had no question about it.
All right.
And it's all monies that came from other places. It wasn't like we had to bond for anything, or so. A new generator that is for the old courthouse and really helps support the dispatch is in. It's for operating, it works, everything's great. And it came in about $35,000 to $40,000 under budget when everything's paid, even electrical. So that's a good thing for us.
We do with the old one?
The old one was taken away. We called around to some locals to see if, and like the last, when we got rid of the generator up at the nursing home, Stewart and John's, Sugar House and the cow, that they took it. And they're running their whole farm off the generator, and well, it's backed up, I'm guessing, if something goes down. So, but we didn't have anybody that wanted to bite on it, so. And Jack, one of the things that down the road at some point, not yet, but I didn't know but I learned that we own the transformer that's right behind the generator. And that when they did the 1979 renovation, that they put the generator in it, the transformer in at that point. So at some point that will be, have to be replaced, but it's not. I asked, they said, no, it's got some years to go. It's good.
I mean, up at Maplewood?
No, there's a transformer between the old courthouse and new courthouse. There's a transformer right there, right behind the generator. And I said, does Eversource owns that? And they said, no, you own it. They looked into the history of it.
Is that only for use when the generator's operating, or is that a continuum?
That's a continuum.
No, I think it's all the time. Who
Yeah.
is the they? Who's the they that said we own this?
The people that put in, and I can't think of their names, the people that did the work on the generator, they had to look at all the histories of that, and also I actually reached out to Rod too, and everybody, the history shows that we own that transformer.
And that's Gemini that did our,
It's Gemini, yeah.
Well, I guess the question is, I know we might have paid for it. We might have work with Eversource to install it, but it's a little unusual for us to actually own it, or in other words, be responsible for it or its replacement. So we ought to run that to ground because
Yeah,
that you
it's
don't,
Eversource that's telling us this. That's where they went. They went to Eversource and said, no, county owns that 100%, and if they replace it, it's on them. But I'm not saying it has to be done now. They're not saying it has to be done now. I'm just making people aware, because I wasn't aware that the transformer was, was ours.
Is that
I
is that a
just,
transformer essential to the operation of a building?
yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
Well, all the power
So-
that comes in flows through that. So but why on earth we would
What
own this?
I can do, Jack, is I can reach out to Eversource myself and just say, can you give me the history and why in an email so that I have that history?
Yeah, it's worth, down the road. I mean, I remember, Eversource wanted to put a transformer at 33 West Street, and we let them do it as a favor. Now, they also paved the parking lot and did some other stuff that, accommodated their transformer, but it just strikes me as odd that going forward, we'd be responsible for some part of the infrastructure of the energy grid, the power grid. But
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me, but could
No,
be
it doesn't make, it was news to me too, so, I'm just writing this down.
Think about giving it to them.
They don't want it. It's another responsibility. Yeah. But I do know that we do not own the 2 transformers that we allowed to be put on our parking lots. I do know that.
Right. Right.
Okay. All right, and that's what I have, for this week, and, moving on to old business, any old business, any new business? Okay, consent agenda items, vote to accept the weekly manifest and minutes of August 7th, 2024. All right, Commissioner Wasback, Commissioner England,
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark?
Yeah.
All right, is there anything on the calendar that we need to know about?
No changes.
Do we have the thing next week?
We do, August 21st at 11:30 to 1:30. So that'll
That's
be
picnic.
exactly, yeah. And we have the menu that I just received, so.
Awesome.
that, similar to the Maplewood lunch.
Just because, do you think people know the Grange is the park next to the,
And I think that'll have to be included in the email.
okay,
sort of
good,
thing, yeah.
thank you. All right, thank you. Any general discussions? Seeing none. Okay, we do have one non-public. It is for, compensation of a public employee. So, I'm gonna ask that Rob stay in and, motion to go into non-public.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're gonna keep Tim on too, all right? All right, so motion was made by, England, Bob England, and seconded by Clark and Commissioner Wasmac.
Aye.
Chief's gotta go
Commissioner
away.
England, yeah, I'll get it second, and Commissioner Clark, all right. And the last person, yeah, we just gotta go, hey, chief,
I'll just kick him out.
kick him out. Kick him out.
Oh, got it. Almost reported him to Zoom.
Oh, no.
Not that anymore.
Can you kick me?
Come in. All right, I'm gonna repeat that. Motion to come out of non-public?
So second.
And second, so Bob made the motion, and then you're Commissioner England, aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark, we're out of non-public. And at this point, just a motion to adjourn.
I so moved. Second.
All right, Commissioner England and Commissioner Clark. All right, we're adjourned.
You-
Bye, Ken.
you're still-
Aye.
well,